The fallacy of single-point security in Linux environments. Robust server hardening demands a layered, multi-vector strategy rather than reliance on any one tool or setting. The prevailing notion that a single security tool or configuration can neutralize all threats in a Linux hosting environment is dangerously outdated.
Modern attacks exploit the convergence of misconfigured services, outdated kernels, weak credentials, and neglected attack surface reduction. A truly secure posture requires simultaneous attention to access control mechanisms, continuous patch management, web stack hardening, and real-time observability through logging and monitoring.
Managed hosting providers like Olvi operationalize this holistic approach by offloading the complexity of constant vigilance to expert engineers, yet the strategic principle remains immutable. Security is a system, not a switch.
Historical evolution of Linux server threats. The shift from kernel exploits to application layer attacks necessitates a holistic defense posture. In the early decades of Linux adoption, security focus centered on kernel-level vulnerabilities and rootkits, often mitigated by a single kernel patch or a Linux policy.
Today, however, the threat surface has expanded dramatically to include supply chain compromises, DDoS amplification, and web application exploits targeting PHP, Node.js, or WordPress plugins.
This evolution has rendered point solutions, whether a firewall rule or an intrusion detection system, insufficient. The industry's response is the concept of defense in depth, where layers of controls overlap to cover gaps.
Yet many organizations still treat hardening as a checklist rather than an ongoing discipline, a gap that managed services like Olvi fill by continuously rebalancing protections against emerging vectors.
The 5 pillars of Linux hardening: attack surface, access control, patching, web stack security, and observability form an interdependent framework. A rigorous hardening regimen rests on 5 interdependent pillars.
First, attack surface reduction involves disabling unused services, closing unnecessary ports, and removing default credentials effects that compound over time. Second, access control requires moving beyond passwords to SSH key authentication, enforcing least privilege via sudo policies, and segregating user roles.
Third, patch management is critical. Unpatched kernels, CVEs, or outdated OpenSSL versions remain top initial access vectors. Fourth, web stack security demands tightening configurations for Nginx, Apache, and database services, including proper HTTP headers and TLS ciphers.
Finally, observability through centralized logging syslog, journaled and real-time monitoring
Prometheus, Alert Manager transforms reactive firefighting into proactive detection. Olvi integrates these pillars into a unified operational model, but the principle applies to any administrator. Skipping one pillar weakens the entire edifice.
Managed hardening as the new standard. Outsourcing security to expert engineers mitigates complexity and reduces human error, but requires continuous evolution. As Linux environments scale, the overhead of maintaining 5 hardening pillars in-house often leads to configuration drift and oversight, precisely where cybercriminals strike.
Managed services like Olvi offer a strategic advantage by institutionalizing expert review of every layer, from kernel parameters to application runtime. However, the landscape is not static. Emerging risks such as zero-day exploits in container runtimes and AI-augmented brute force attacks necessitate that managed providers continuously update their playbooks.
For businesses, the verdict is clear: adopt a managed approach to eliminate the human error bottleneck, but insist on transparency and periodic third-party audits. The future of secure Linux hosting lies not in any single tool, but in the disciplined execution of a comprehensive evergreen hardening strategy.